What's up, YouTube? It's your boy P, and this video is going to cover everything you need to know about Simulacrum farming for our build Poisonous Concoction of Bouncing. In the current Fresio League, Simulacrum keys are extremely cheap. They started around 5 chaos, and they've only gone up to roughly 15 chaos, even though we're at the end of day 5. The reason for this is that everybody, after completing the endgame, gets a free Simulacrum key through the Pconc battle pass, even the free version. So there's just so many of these keys floating around, and this is very aspirational content, so a lot of people just can't run it themselves. As for my current build, we're sitting at 17.3 million DPS, which is a pretty big DPS jump from yesterday. You don't need this much to do Simulacrum. I would say you probably want to aim for roughly 12 million minimum. You could maybe squeeze by with a little bit less. If you don't know how to calculate your total DPS for Pconc bouncing, if you go back on my channel to the day 3 update, I believe, I go over how to calculate your total DPS based on your projectiles and all the configs, etc. Anyways, to do Simulacrum, it's not mostly about your damage. There's actually a lot of checkboxes you need to make sure you're accounting for on our character, and they're all defensive based. So let's just get right into that. Okay, so to do Simulacrums, one pretty big defensive layer you want is ailment immunity, because you can get alt ailments as well as regular ailments on your character through the Simulacrum mobs. So that means simply being immune to freeze, immune to shock. That's not good enough because you're getting scorch, brittle, etc. Like there's so many. Just get full ailment immunity. On a budget, you technically could use the shield Leper's Alms. The shared suffering works as sort of pseudo ailment immunity, so you could opt for this. I think it would be fine. Obviously, it's going to be more comfortable if you just do the ailment immunity boots craft and use an ancestral vision. I have a guide on my channel exactly on making these boots, and you just throw on the jewel, your full ailment immunity. It's going to be the best case to do it this way. Next up, you want a pretty big Fizz max hit, and there are several ways to do this. In my League Start guide, we have 3 different body armors that all drastically improve the Fizz max hit: Lightning Coil, Cloak of Flames, or Doppelganger's Guise. Now, the ultimate way to improve your Fizz max hit would be to use Cloak of Flames, because this league we have a second Cloak of Flames on our Ascendancy, and you can pair this with Dawnbreaker to have 100% Fizz taken as fire. And then you can combine this with 90 Fire Res as well as a Timeless Jewel. And all this setup is included in the original League Start video. There's a link to a pod made by Rutu, which has the full defensive combo. I'm actually not even running it right now, so we're doing Simulacrums without this. I'm just using the Doppelganger's Guise, which also really improves the Fizz max hit. It's pretty hard to swap over to the Purity of Fire version because there's just so many moving pieces to fit in. I do intend to swap over to this, but you know, I wanted to rush into Simulacrums. We're not waiting for this massive Fizz max hit. Now, I should say that actually the Ellie conversion shift from the Cloak of Flames full Fizz to Fire setup is actually the most important part of this defensive layer, at least in terms of Simulacrums, because realistically, Doppelganger's Guise and Lightning Coil do also give you really high Fizz max hits. However, when you're shifting the lightning and cold damage onto fire, which is done through Dawnbreaker as well as the Watcher's Eye mod, now you're avoiding lightning and cold penetration. And the worst mods you can get, aside from plus 60% chaos res on monsters, is double penetration. Because every penetration mod is combined. It's a hybrid mod where you also get every single monster doing Fizz as extra of that damage type. So you're really getting tested on these penetration waves. Obviously, the Cloak Flame setup is not going to help for Fire Pen, all Ellie Pen, and Chaos Pen. However, it will help for Cold Pen and Lightning Pen. So you're taking 2 of these mods out of the pool of being dangerous, and it's a lot less likely to get double Pen at this point. Right, moving on, a high evasion rating is going to be really good for Simulacrum because now you're getting hit by a small fraction of what you would be getting hit otherwise. My build has a full 95 evade cap with Vol Grace. If you are using Grace, you need to be using the Vol version, and just press it when there's a lot of monsters. Normally I press it right at the beginning of a wave. Sometimes I'll press it if I'm fighting one of the bosses, because then you're just basically not getting hit at all, and you're pretty safe. Without the Vol Grace, I'm still, I think, at least 80%. I don't really remember how much, but it is good enough. Obviously, we already touched on high DPS. The higher damage, the safer it is, because the monsters aren't just piling up, you're killing them faster. Again, much safer. Stun immunity is a must because you're going to hit so often. They're going to stagger you, they're going to slow down your damage. It's just horrible. So stun immunity also paired with phasing for the same reason. And the way we get phasing is on the tree. It's just right along the path that you can take one node for phasing. And stun immunity, it was in the league start POB, and for the current setup, I've taken off the 3 points on the tree, which were giving me 60% stun avoidance. And I have 6 tattoos that each give me 10% stun avoidance. So that just saved me 3 passive points that I could put into a large cluster setup. Next up, curse immunity, or at least curse reduction. The way I'm getting curse immunity is through a double mod for the Balance of Terror, double despair. Although realistically, this is not something that's feasible. I just kind of got lucky. You could get curse reduction through a flask suffix. And if you had spots for rare jewels, you could also get up to 30% reduction of curses on a rare jewel. But realistically, you don't have to hit 100% curse immunity. Every little bit is good. It just scales up in a linear fashion. Even if you just get a flash suffix for 60% reduction of curses, that would be, in my opinion, perfectly fine. Next up, you do need to be crit immune, and the way we get that, it's sort of pseudo crit immunity. It's a poison mastery. Every monster that's poisoned is going to not be able to crit you. And thankfully, with the explode as well as just the shotgunning nature of Pconc bouncing, most dangerous things are going to be not able to crit you. Just make sure you are hitting Kosis and hitting Omniphobia, so you are applying a poison to make sure they can't crit you, I guess. That would be my tip here. A very important defensive layer for Simulacrums is recovery. This build gets this in several different ways. First up, we use Clever Thief to get attack damage leached as life, and the Mastery gives us instant leech. However, just as importantly, we are taking excess sustenance, which gives 15% chance to gain 200 life on hit with attacks. If you wanted to scale recovery further, you could possibly use a Vitality Watcher's Eye mod to get life gain on hit. The path leading up to excess sustenance gives you 10 life on hit, and we are hitting so frequently that, in my opinion, we're probably able to get by without the Watcher's Eye mod. As for the Pantheons, I recommend Lunaris. We started off on Brian King because it gives you Cannot Be Frozen as well as the pseudo stun immunity, but the current setup already has stun immunity, element immunity. So Lunaris is going to be best in these massive, overwhelming amounts of monsters scenario. And I use Rislothas for the small one for extra life flasks, although, you could do the curse reduction one. I don't know. There's a bunch of good small ones. It's really up to you. As for my current character, clearly we are pushing DPS at the expense of survivability. I can't always do them deathless. Some really horrible mods will kill me, although realistically we are getting wave 15 and clearing it most of the time. The biggest upgrade I could make would be in my probably Progenesis. So I drop a life flask for Progenesis. And at some point I would like to swap over to the Ellie Shift full Fizz to Fire. Although I might need level 100 for this. So today I might be trying to grind some XP with Abyss, stacking the experience idol. All right, let's hop into POB. I'll update you guys on my character, but yeah, this was sort of the overview of what you need to get ready for if you want to farm simulacrums or just in general extremely hard aspirational type content. Quick update of my character for the build diary portion of this video. I'm sitting at 1.235 million. And we multiply this by 14 instead of 13 now, because I have 14 projectiles. 17.3 million total DPS. So what has changed? Well, Awakened GMP. We're using this, and it gives me an additional projectile, which is additional 1.235 million damage. That's pretty good. I was expecting this to be expensive. I paid 10 divines for it. This was honestly off my radar because I assumed it would be so much more than it ended up being. What else has changed? Stygian Vise with a Searching Eye Jewel. This is just capping my accuracy, giving me some extra life, a little bit of damage. The belt, honestly, it's just a bunch of res and life. Has anything else changed? Not really. Well, did I say this in my last video? I don't remember. We are using Chaos Inoculation. I think this is new. I don't think this is in the last video. Chaos Inoculation, Wormhole Jewel. Bought this for 16 div. Gives me an additional curse. It gives me some minus chaos res for enemies. Obviously, the spell portion of this doesn't work for us, but there's very few ways to reduce monster chaos res, so this ends up being some extreme value node as well. Atrophy, influence. And we tattooed on all of this, chance to avoid being stunned, freed up these points, so I was able to get a large cluster. Now, I got one with a bad node at the end because we're just so starved for points. Technically, you could get 10% more Obliteration Explosion through one of the options here, but I opted for Unholy Grace for a lot of damage and Touch of Cruelty to apply Hinder as well as give us. So now we're getting, instead of 90% more damage from Wither, we're getting an extra 10% increase. So we're getting 100% more damage on enemies through the combination of Wither and Touch of Cruelty. This also opens up another follow through node. So the plans moving forward are to drop this life flask for Progenesis. Progenesis is 40 div. I can't afford that yet. We're able to do this because we've unbound my last life flask. You can't really see it, but there's no button number 5. Like, I literally cannot click this. And the reason is we are using 100% maximum charges. So instead of having 45, this now has 145 charges. And it's going to be easier to maintain some amount of life flask in order to boost our Pconc damage while fitting in another very powerful flask. After that, I would like to, we're level 96. If we could get this jewel socket, I'd be able to keep all of my jewels since I really do like these jewels. And we'd be able to put in the Timeless Jewel that enables the Dawnbreaker Cloak of Flames setup to go full Fizz to Fire shift. And we'd also swap the Watcher's Eye to have the LE to Fire shift going on at the same time. But that is a pretty big change. And it's not so easy because Purity of Fire is 35% resist or 35% reservation, and we'd want to probably take off Flesh and Stone, which is 25%. Hopefully we'll get it done. Maybe not tomorrow, but it is in the pipeline. All right. That's the plan moving forward. Real short update, I guess. There's a few stuff being swapped around. All right, I'm going to go live on Twitch. We are doing possibly more of the Abyss strat, although I've taken off some chance for bosses to get more experience from the monsters because we really want these levels. All right, I'll see you live on Twitch. Take care.